Good evening, White Sox fans. It is Tuesday, pardon me, Wednesday, June 11th. It's been a couple weeks. We've been off. Danny's been working his tail off at the job, but we're back, and this is the latest edition of Future Sox Hot Takes and Heaters. The young gentleman sitting next to me on your screens and in your ears this evening will be Jacob Thome. How you doing tonight, Jake? Are you muted? I can't hear you.
Hey, now you can hear me.
All right.
Doing well, unlike the White Sox. That's what I said.
Oh, actually, I feel like the White Sox they're doing better than I expected. Even
I was talking about currently. Correct. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I'm saying currently not
Tonight,
not
so
great.
not so much. But in recent weeks, since we haven't been around a whole lot, the White Sox are playing a slightly better brand of baseball. Not without its faults, which we'll get into tonight, but definitely, definitely, like you said a few weeks ago, they are fun bad in some ways. They are beating teams that are maybe not world beaters, but are definitely better than what we expected from our White Sox this season. And they currently sit, tonight aside, they currently sit at a 400 winning percentage, which I don't know if you know what the pace for a 400 winning percentage is, but it's actually 65 games.
Sounds about right.
So,
that makes sense. I mean, they've been playing better ball lately. I think they've been playing 500 balls since, or just under 500 balls since.
Would it shock
May-ish.
you if the White Sox continued to play 400 ball or stay at that 400 range for the rest of the season?
No, not at all. I would actually expect them to kind of stay at this 400 range. The thing is, I mean, they're winning games, but they're also beating quality opponents. I mean, we talked about, obviously, they go and face Detroit and take, they split that series with Detroit. They take 2 or 3 from Kansas City. Took 1 last night against Houston. It's not looking great today, but it's not like they're doing this against the Marlins, against the Pirates, against the Rockies. They're doing this against quality opponents. All 3 of those teams made the postseason last year. What's going on, Scott? So I think it's important for the culture of this team to recognize that they are beating quality teams. Obviously, the Tigers have the most wins. Or at least when they played them, they did. Most wins in all of MLB. So really impressive showing so far this month for the White Sox, and hoping they can continue it past today.
Yeah, and I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate for some of the folks out there that, I've asked this question a few times aside from asking you tonight on the air, but when I ask folks, where do you think the White Sox record is going to be? And they say, it looks like they're going to be a little bit better than originally predicted by a lot of folks at this point. But they're also saying things like, well, the trade deadline hasn't come around yet. And any piece of talent that the White Sox have, they're expected to trade away. And I'm going to kind of go in the opposite direction of that train of thought here for just a moment. Because right now, the players that are producing on this White Sox teams are the ones I expect to be around next year.
Right.
The young Kyle Teals, which is not being traded at any point in the next year. He is expected to be part of the long-term White Sox team in the future. And, then there's guys like Chase Mydroth, who has been pretty solid most of the season. You've got a bevy of young pitchers that are coming up and doing some things. I really don't feel like most of the guys that are producing right now are going to be gone coming around trade deadline. Sure, there's going to be a handful of changes here and there, but I also feel like what's coming up behind them probably going to be typically similar players as to what's on the roster right now, and I think we probably get very similar results from
Yeah.
those guys, and then it all just depends on what we get back in some of these trades at the trade deadline as well too. So I'm not looking for the White Sox to be world beaters anytime soon. We all know that, but I don't think they're going to have this major fall off after the trade deadline because we're going to trade away, a whole ton of, major league veteran talent. It's not there. It hasn't been there the last couple of seasons, and you can probably get the same kind of production out of a bag of chips for some of these guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only real contributor that your potential loss of is Mike Talkman, who's playing right field for them currently and playing really well out there. But I mean, anybody else you're trading, you're really trading off of potential, honestly. I mean, you're trading Luis Robert if he's going to be the guy who goes off of pure potential. He's been bad this year, at least offensively, defensively, and on the base paths, he's been good. But you're trading some of these relievers like a Cam Booster, who the background looks good. Like if you go to Statcast, everything points in the right direction, but the results haven't been there for him this season. He's floating above a 4 ERA. It's beginning to get better, but I just think there's a funness to this team. That's not a word, but we're going to use it anyway. That it is the young guys that are coming up and really propelling. I mean, Chase Mydroth is hitting the light side. He's probably the White Sox best hitter right now. And he was the third piece in that Crochet deal. Shane Smith, I mean, there's not much left to be said about him. He's been absolutely out fantastic for a rule of 5 guy. So, I mean, when you're looking for the trade deadline, yeah, I think some trades will be made, like you said, but the true hitters and pitchers that are really dominating right now, other than potentially a guy like Davis Martin, who I know has been talked a little bit about on White Sox Twitter, about him getting moved. But other than that, I mean, I think really the players who are performing right now are really the young guys in the core of this team going forward.
Yeah, I can't argue with any of that. And, it's just a matter of waiting to see what's going to happen at that deadline and what kind of returns the White Sox are going to get for some of these guys. Let me ask you this. Do you think, and because I've heard a lot of people mention his name, and you brought it up again just now, Shane Smith, is he a guy who sticks with the White Sox, or do they try to trade him away for, probably a decent value return?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, and we'll talk about this guy later, the move and the news that it's coming out, the reporter that the Sox do not have any plans to move Grant Taylor into the rotation anytime soon. I think that's kind of, the Sox have an interesting problem at 2 areas, middle infield and pitcher, which is a good place to have them. That's where you want all your prospects to be, but they're going to have a jumble of pitchers. And, you start looking at Charlotte, you start looking at the minor league ranks of like, all right, everybody talks about the pitchers. Where are they? Well, they're all just had Tommy John over the offseason. There are so many talented pitchers that would probably be up at this point. Mason Adams, Kai Bush would be here. Baroa is probably your closer. Blake Larson wouldn't be anywhere near the major league level, but he's like a talented pitcher, 2nd-round pick last year. Like there's so many guys that got hurt. Corella's another guy in there that I think could have made a difference on this team. And a lot of those guys, I think the White Sox are going to want to see what they have in the rotation. Obviously, there are some guys, Wickelman, Gonzalez, Paulette, Addison Coffey, those cluster of guys are all truly bullpen guys, but there's, a good chunk of guys. Drew Thorpe, another name to be thrown in there, who I think the White Sox believe is going to be a long-term cornerstone of that rotation, probably in the back end somewhere, but obviously hoping he can come back from Tommy John and have a more successful season than he did last year. But there's just so many players that the White Sox are probably going to want to try out in the starting rotation to move Grant Taylor to the bullpen and keep him there. And I think one of those is Shane Smith, who I don't understand any concerns of trading him. You have him, I believe, for still 7 or 6.5 technically years of control. He's still young. He doesn't make sense to me. There are other starting pitchers that make sense. Davis Martin's a name that I've thrown out there. Adrian Hauser, obviously, on a 1-year deal makes sense to me. But yeah, I've seen the Shane Smith stuff. I'm blown away by it. It doesn't make sense for the Sox to want to get rid of him, especially because they're starting to play some better baseball.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that one as well. the White Sox have been stockpiling pitching talent for a long time. And in the world of baseball, we'll say it over and over and over again. Every season, every podcast that you and I sit here, and every podcast that Ian and I have done that had concerned the starting rotation or even the bullpen, we've always mentioned that, especially in the starting rotation, that you might only have a 5-man rotation, but no team in baseball uses less than 9 or 10 pitchers throughout a season. Guys, go through dead arm periods, they go through injuries, whether it just be minor or you end up with the guys that they get the UCL tears and are down for a year to 18 months. It's just one of those things where, and especially now in today's MLB, where it's happening more often, and it's happening to guys that are younger. We see the guys that are doing it preemptively in high school, in college, just to get it done, which I'm not so sure I agree with. But who am I? I'm not a doctor. I am not a what is it? The kinesiologist? No, whatever. Those guys that work in the biomechanics, I guess, or biomechanists. I don't really know, but the reality is those surgeries are going to happen. The injuries are going to happen. Guys are going to go down. And we're talking about a White Sox team that's probably going to depend on its pitching more than its hitting for a long, long time to come until, we have the new ownership news that's come out in the last, week or so here. But it sounds like Ishbia's first shot at becoming the majority owner of the White Sox doesn't come until 2029. So we're still a few years away from that. I don't see the White Sox going out and spending a huge amount of money on free agent bats. So we have to rely on our pitching staff. And I wholeheartedly believe that as long as Brian Bannister is in the organization, he's probably going to do everything he can to keep a guy like Shane Smith on the team. So, and going back to what we're talking about with Grant Taylor coming up, and the White Sox news basically coming out and saying that they feel like the bullpen is probably a better place for him with his long motion, his 7.5-foot extension by the time he's releasing. They've been comparing him to players like Tyler Glasnow, who have had some injury history because of that extension on their release. I don't know that. Pardon me. I don't know that that's the long-term plan for him. I know it's the plan for right now. There are some folks out there. I know the guys over, I believe it was Sox Machine. I read an article, probably just earlier today, if I remember correctly, saying that they feel like if he's successful in a bullpen role, which we'll talk a little bit about last night in a minute, but if he's successful in a bullpen role, is there any real reason to push him back into the starting rotation conversation? Because we do have all these other guys that are coming up and expected to be, starters at the MLB level, and not just starters, but have the potential to be solid, guys that could be 1, 2s, and 3s just about anywhere you put them if they meet expectations. So I don't really see a market where the White Sox start trading away big name pitchers and guys that are doing it. But the main thing is that with Shane Smith and Grant Taylor is I feel like if Grant Taylor doesn't succeed, and we've seen this with Garrett Crochet, where he didn't succeed in a bullpen role, but he was coming back. They were trying to stretch him out a little bit. Grant Taylor's kind of in the same boat. If he doesn't feel comfortable as a reliever, and he doesn't find a niche there, is there a chance that they try to stretch him out in the future? And I think there is. So
Yeah.
I don't want to beat that horse. So anyways, moving on. We did kind of bring up some trade talk while we were in the middle of this pitcher's rant here. So we are in mid-June as of now, and the trade deadline is going to be creeping up on us rather quickly. I just feel like the season is rolling and things are happening and moving fast. And now the phone calls are starting to happen. Chris Getz even made the mention that guys are, teams are inquiring about guys constantly, and they expect those calls to ramp up. But the name that we brought up just a little bit ago in this conversation, as far as position players goes, was Luis Robert Jr. And where do you think he's going to end up, and is he going to be traded? Bob Nightingale's come out with some reports. There's been some other people that have come out with reports. Francis Romero's come out with some reports. But let me ask you this: the big thing the big name that keeps coming up since the beginning of the last year's offseason when it comes to Luis Robert Jr. is the Yankees. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it was a great spot until Trent Grisham decided to put up whatever he's putting up. Trent Grisham could legitimately be an all-star for the Yankees in center field, which is insane because there was no previous success of that. I mean, right. I mean, I think the Yankees obviously always make sense. The Dodgers always make sense just because they have endless amounts of prospects. And admittedly, I think their prospect pools are a little overhyped at times. But, I mean, they have the money to sign these guys. They have the stuff like that. But I think, I think the Yankees made sense until Grisham became a star. I still think there's other teams out there that I think there's interest to be had in. But I mean, and the other question then for the Yankees is like, do we believe that he's going to continue to do this throughout the entire 162? He's having the type of season. I'm not going to remember his name. Jurickson Profar. Last year with the Padres, kind of like the same thing of just like, obviously, not saying Grisham did PEDs, but putting it out there that randomly he showed up and was, a top guy for them. And like I said, he could legitimately be an all-star for them in the Bronx. So, yeah, that's kind of an unexpected turn of taking the Yankees out of the Luis Robert sweepstakes.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Trent Grisham because if you hadn't, I had that bullet loaded in my gun for that. Is there really a fit for Luis Robert Jr. for the Yankees? Are they, do they split time when they go over there? Because you're not going to trade for Luis Robert Jr. to sit on your bench, right? The White Sox, even though Luis Robert Jr. isn't having the best of seasons this year, he's still only a year and a half removed from a 38 home run season. And he went through his injury struggles, and he probably doesn't want to play with the White Sox no more. It's basically the rhetoric that we keep hearing over and over again. Do I know if that's true? I don't know. It kind of looks that way. A lot of people are speculating it. Has Luis come out and said it? Not publicly. It hasn't been reported anywhere where he's like, I don't want to play for this team anymore. But I can't imagine that a guy who's been through everything he's been through with this team and watched the things happen and watched the way this team gets dragged in the media and, players don't necessarily get the right hype when it's time for them to get the right hype, but they sure as hell get dumped on pretty hard in the Chicago market. So I can imagine that there's probably some truth to that. But the other thing is if you look at recent times, last night's game especially, where Luis Robert Jr. had a really big game, including a monster bomb, you got to wonder. I mean, he's been hitting the ball really hard for a while, but the one thing that remains is he's still chasing that garbage down and away over and over and over again. And during spring training and in the early part of the season, it looked like he had gotten away from that. And he's gone back to it. And I just wonder if he's pushing, if he's really trying to just make something happen, and he's probably overdoing it. So does a change of scenery do something for him? But the real question is, well, I was just, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, finish your thought.
I was just going to say, I was going to ask, the real question is what kind of value do the White Sox get? Are other teams banking on that turnaround or banking on the fact that he's not happy playing here and he's going to be a happier player somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because he was second in MVP voting 2 years ago. Like, and if Judge doesn't have a monster year, like he always does at this point, like he's the clear-cut MVP. But it's been so bad since. He got off to an okay average start last year, then got hurt. He's stayed healthy this year, which is like a positive. And what we saw in 23, really, his only fully clean season in terms of health. And then he comes out and he's just straight up not good at the plate, right? So, I mean, there is, when you look around the center field position in the MLB, there are not a ton of guys who can play gold glove defense and hit 40 home runs. And Luis Robert did that just 2 years ago. And obviously the injuries are a concern, right? Did the injuries last year hurt him? Or, like you said, is it more of the I'm playing for the worst team in baseball, at least last year they were, and I keep getting talked about traded, and obviously that's been a part of his. I mean, he's put some interesting statements out into the media talking about, what team's going to want to trade for me right now, stuff like that. And so I think it can be tough for a guy like that who, you know, it's obviously uncertain of like where his future is going to be. But the other issue too is he now is a guy that if you trade for him, you are stuck with two $20 million team options the next 2 seasons, and you're going to have to make the tough decision as if the White Sox don't trade Luis Robert of how much is the potential worth? Is it worth $20 million to a guy who, was, like I mentioned, second in MVP voting 2 years ago? But if you, on the flip side of that, you go, hey, if this guy turns around, gets to our team and lights it up, there's 2 years of just $20 million for a contract, which, and nowadays in the MLB, is not that insane of a deal. So I think it's a catch-22. I don't think he's going to have a ton of value. There's no shot he's getting like a top 100 guy back. I think you're in the range of a decent prospect, whether that be top 5 or top 10 in a team's arsenal and maybe a couple of flyers. But it'll be interesting to see what Chris Getz and co. decide to do. It'll also be interesting to see what they do if they trade him. I mean, they don't currently have a backup center fielder. Michael A. Taylor's good, but he's another guy that we expect to get traded. Brooks Baldwin is very much in play to be the center fielder the second half of the season if Robert is traded. So, it's just going to be interesting to see how this all unfolds out. Unfortunately, probably not in the White Sox favor if you would have told them this back in 23.
You bring up Brooks Baldwin. Like, what? Like, he struggled. He struggled mightily. And he's just learning to play the outfield, right? He's been a. It's not that he's never played the outfield, but he has a little experience in the outfield, right? And we saw that movie play out early in the season already with him having some games in left field that were less than desirable performances, should we say? Some routine plays that were made to look difficult or just completely botched. That is that's not the type of name you want to hear thrown around if both Michael A. Taylor and Luis Robert Jr. are traded. Fletcher's still in the organization somewhere, is he not?
Yes.
So. Maybe you move somebody around. You put Fletcher out in right field and you make some moves, but unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of big outfield depth. When, like Scott W. said earlier in the chat, you probably trade Mike Tauchman at the deadline. You get what you can for him. And then there's a chance that maybe you do turn around and sign him in the offseason. Who knows? I don't know. But potentially there is no center fielder by the end after the deadline. At least not a true cut, homegrown, in-house center fielder. Unless you get something in one of these returns that you can kind of just throw out there to finish out the season.
I mean, I'm not super familiar. I do know that they did bring in Drew Baker, outfield prospect from the Rays in exchange for Matt Tice. I don't know. He's playing somewhere in the outfield. I know he's an outfielder for certain. I believe he's a corner outfielder, though. But, like, going forward in the prospect pool, like, there's not a ton of outfielders. Obviously, the main one is Braden Montgomery, but he fits probably more in right. And then you have, as I just mentioned, Shoemaker. Past that, like, it's going to get to the point where you're the Padres and you start moving middle infielders out to the outfield just out of pure necessity. And I think it'll be interesting to see because, obviously we can talk draft for the other guys, we'll let them talk the MLB draft if we want to hit on it, we can. But, there's not a ton of outfielders available either. Obviously, Lavalette is the guy, but there's a lot of prep high schools, and I think the White Sox are going to end up with one of those guys. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the future of the outfield position. Obviously, George Wolko, I don't want to forget about him, is probably an outfielder, but he's also 20 years old and at least 3 years out. So
Right.
it's going to be interesting to see what in the near future.
If you listen to or happen to catch any of James and Ian's Future Sox podcast shows, I know there are quite a few people that will jump into those chats and would be ecstatic. I don't know if he can play center field, but there is a corner outfielder in the organization that people find quite fun. You think Riku Nishida can come up and play center field? I mean, he's a little guy, doesn't have a huge arm, but he has played a lot of corner outfield. Got the wheels.
I mean, they're gonna have to be creative. I think Riku's probably more projected as like a second baseman, but like they have so many middle infielders. Not helping that Chase Maidroth is very much a good defender at short. But like Gonzalez has started to turn it on. Also, I'm totally forgetting Sammy Zavala, who has started to come around. One of our prospect guys would have got mad at me if I didn't mention him. He is an outfielder who is starting to get it to go. Anyway, so yeah, I'm really not sure where they're going to get outfield help. I mean, like I mentioned, the Padres, I believe it was last year, had a team of all shortstops playing everywhere, which is entirely possible for this White Sox team with just how many middle infielders they're going to have here very shortly. So, it's going to be interesting to see what the White Sox do going forward, especially in the outfield position. And, do you keep a guy like Talkman, who I believe has this year and then I think 2 more years of arbitration, so he could be a guy for 2 years if you don't want to trade him at the deadline, depending on what kind of offers you get.
Yeah, I mean, he came back from that injury, and it lit the world on fire as far as White Sox players go. And that's something we haven't seen a lot of as White Sox fans the last few years. Guys come back from injury and they seem like they're just, I don't know if they're rushed or if the training staff just isn't on top of things. It was good to see that a guy came back. He had been given a little bit of extra time down in his rehab stint, and when he finally came up, was looking like he was ready to be the guy that he was being asked to be. So, hopefully that's just a show that the White Sox are moving in the right direction as well too, internally as well. Not just on the baseball field and what they're doing with the coaching staff. You hope that that's just a sign of future things to come as far as like training staff and just making the right decisions on some of these players. And just being patient with guys. So just wanted to point that out. And, of course, again, it is a little bit early. I know the deadline is going to be coming up on us pretty quickly, but it's still fairly early. But we'll probably touch on it here and there every week up until that point, until we get into like the last week or two before, just because, the news is going to be out there, right? We've been talking about Luis Robert since last season. His name comes up constantly, but as things heat up, we'll get more in depth in potential landing spots for some of these guys. And excuse me, I was trying to shove some food down my face right before the show. My Uber driver, I think he had to stop and pray because it was getting to be sundown, because like he got halfway from the store. You're watching on the app, and he got like halfway from the store and just stopped and sat for like 10 minutes. And my wife texted him even. It was quite interesting. Anywho, let's move on. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
Before we get into some of the positives that we're seeing from some of these young White Sox players, did you have an opportunity to see what was going on the other side of the planet today?
Is that exactly the other side of the planet, or
I don't know.
I
if
always
it's
find
exactly,
those things interest. But yes, other side of the world. No, I did.
Yeah, but I mean, right there in the smack in the middle of the Mediterranean, there's that boot that we
Yeah.
call Italy, and in the middle of that is its own little sovereign ground, Vatican City. And Pope Leo solidified his White Sox fandom for everybody. He came out and did a did an appearance wearing a White Sox ball cap. What do you think of that?
For one, kind of ashamed it was a 47 hat, not a 5950. But on a real note, it's insane that the first baseball team to appear on top of the Pope's head is the Chicago White Sox. Don't fact check me. Someone's gonna pull out some random, like, I don't know, maybe an
Or
Oriole
maybe
landing.
I
on the
might it
Pope's
might
head,
not be
but
the first time, but I would imagine it's the first time that it happened actually at the Vatican
you're right.
in a in a sanctioned public appearance. You know what I mean? Like this was not just some random pope. Like we caught him walking down the street somewhere. No, he was in his garb and
Right.
had a White Sox hat on. So pretty cool stuff if you ask me. Yeah, your comment on the 47 hat, whatever. I would, if anything, I would like to see him in a 39-30 with it, kicked backwards.
Yep. There it is.
I
There it
mean, if you're
is.
gonna go south side, let's go full south side.
Right.
And I say 39-30 because he's an older guy. I'm sure he likes a little bit of curve in that bill, a little bit of bend. So, anywho, all right. Well, we're about halfway into the show. We have a few things that we would like to get to. Jake, why don't you go ahead and throw out what you told me you want to discuss tonight? Because we've been talking about some of the positives. Let's talk a little bit about what hasn't gone well for the White Sox in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna give a spotlight to the pitching staff, and then Sean Burke decided to give up 7 earned. So no, I mean, I think it's still there. I mean, I think the bullpen is pitching better. Which, listen, it's very hard to pitch worse than the bullpen was pitching. But they're finally starting to come along. Obviously, Grant Taylor, we've talked about him a couple of times. How could you not? ICERT is starting to come along. The Statcast page is painted red. They finally got rid of Bryce Wilson, who might have been the worst pitcher I've ever. No, that's not true. I've definitely watched worse, way worse pitchers. So yeah, I mean, I think there's some hope of you put the bullpen together. I was giving the pitching staff praise, but I'll give the offense a little praise. Sorted this out a couple of days ago. Sox are averaging 4.3 runs per game since May 23rd. That was the date that Andre was sent down. And that would currently rank 14th in the MLB. So you put that together, you put the starting rotation. Sean Burke had a 2.86 ERA in the last 9 games started before this one, which not great. Cannon was dealing before the injury. Obviously, Shane Smith was fantastic, and Davis Martin's been great as well. So you put that together with listen, this bullpen's not going to be in the top half of the league, but maybe they can get to top 25 range. Keep in mind, there's 30 teams in the MLB. That's the bar they have to clear. And they finally get a closer in what I believe will be Grant Taylor. I think there's some momentum to go forward. We talked about it a little bit that they're, kind of going along. They're going to play 400 ball the rest of the way out. And with all 3 of the phases of the game looking well, I think there's a little bit of positivity in that.
Yeah, I'll just add that we didn't spend on our bullpen the way Rick Hahn would have in the past, right? Where the money was spent when they told us years ago during the first rebuild or the last rebuild before this one that the money would be spent. Nobody expected it to be spent, the majority of it to be spent on a bullpen. And that bullpen was not particularly the best bullpen around either. We know it's the most volatile place to be in MLB during any given year. Having said that, these guys have not been great. They have been thrown into every situation, and they've tried every different guy they possibly could. There's been a handful of guys who have just been solid innings eaters. They go out there, they do the thing, but nobody has been a world beater. We don't have a back end by any means, and like you said, hopefully Grant Taylor can fill that role. But it's tough to watch when the White Sox, like you say, they're scoring 4.2 runs a game. We get to see Andre Vaughn sent down, and his time with the Knights isn't exactly going great either. So, it may be a while before we see him back. Whatever it is he's working on, I hope he works it out for his sake. But I think his days on the South Side are pretty much numbered at this point, if not over. But yeah, the tough thing is we said it again from the beginning of the season until now. There's probably going to be a lot of shuffle and a lot of shakeup throughout that bullpen. It's going to continue until they feel like they probably have something that is somewhat of a reliable spot in each spot in that rotation. A reliable guy coming out in each spot in that rotation, or at least to the best of what they have available at any given moment. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to watch games where the White Sox have a lead going into the later innings, 5th, 6th inning, and completely implode.
Yeah.
So, and that's the place where good teams win.
Yeah.
Good teams that are scoring 4 runs, that's where they win. They win by having a strong bullpen.
I have an insane story that I will share quickly, personal story. So, Tyler Alexander, now a member of the White Sox bullpen, made his debut July 3rd of 2019. Reason I remember that date, greatest White Sox game I've been to in person, except for Game 3 of the ALDS. So, that was the game Yoel Moncada hit 2 home runs. Ryan Cordell had like the greatest game of his life. Jose Ruiz nails in the bottom of the 12th. It's nowhere on the internet. I was so disappointed. I watched the game. He struck out the side. Jose Ruiz, remind you, not a great White Sox pitcher. It's nowhere online. The highlights the next day, nobody showed it. I was kind of depressed, and then Jose Abreu walked it off. So as soon as Tyler Alexander got signed to the White Sox, I was like, oh my God, that's Tyler Alexander. Also interesting to note, July 3rd, 2019 was the day Dylan Cease debuted in Game 1 of that doubleheader. I was at Game 2 of said doubleheader. Random tangent that nobody cares about, but wanted to share my personal experience with the Chicago White Sox.
No, love to hear it, man. Love to hear it. I think I've told you my favorite White Sox moment. We won't get into it. It goes back to the rookie season of Lexi Ramirez and the game that forced 163. But anywho, why don't we go ahead and move into what's going on and why the White Sox are, at least in my opinion, why they are actually playing some more fun baseball. And why they're winning a few more games. And I think it's just the cultural change in the organization. And I think that cultural change is coming about in a few different ways. We've talked about, the changes to the organization in the rear view. I don't want to say the rear view. From behind the scenes. The things that we talk about, training staffs, and we talk about, biomechanists, and we talk about the White Sox getting up to speed with technology that where they were lacking in years past. And maybe they're still not completely there, but they have done some things to bring themselves into the 21st century. But the other thing that's happening right now that I believe is changing the culture is the youth movement. And we have seen some guys come up and do some things. And I'd like to, since we've already talked a little bit about Grant Taylor, let's go ahead and talk about his game last night a little bit and then move on. Did you have an opportunity to watch that game and watch the 7th inning?
Yes. I watched the entire game.
And what did you think of his performance?
I mean, obviously, like, you look at the fastball, right? And, like, all right, 101's cool, but, like, also thought it was pretty cool that, like, he didn't throw a slider, yet every single time it said slider. That's his curveball, and it moves insanely well for what it is. First one was quite a bit short, but didn't generate any swings and whiffs on it. That'll come around, but threw a ton of strikes, filled up the strike zones. Listen, 12 pitch inning, 1, 2, 3, as clean as you want it.
Was it 12? I thought it was 10.
Thought it was
Might have been
12. I
12.
could be wrong. Anyway, I mean that's what you want. That's what you want out of a closer type of guy. I saw something with the extension and everything calculated and how he throws it. It looks like 102.8, 102.7, I think was the number coming at you, which is insane. He lit up the radar gun.
The first pitch he threw was like 101 and change.
101.5.
Yeah, like, I mean, you come out of the bullpen, and obviously it's your first major league appearance. Probably a little gassed up. But, I mean, he threw 101.5, and it was a dart.
Right, that's the biggest thing is, like, the control was there. Like, Kopech, Crochet, when they were young, more Crochet time, or more of Kopech, could throw 102, but they couldn't control it. It was all over the place. They had no idea where it was going. It's no good if 102 is no good if you can sit at it and look at it and take it for a ball every time. He was able to dot it, generate a lot of weak contact. The first out was hit pretty hard out to Luis. But a couple of you don't have to put much on it to make 102 go pretty far. So,
as I say, you throw it hard, it gets hit hard. That's just the nature of the game.
But I think he did a good job avoiding the hard contact. Obviously, it's only one inning. That's all we have to go off of here. But a really encouraging start from Taylor. But yeah, I don't know. 102, man. It's fun to watch whenever you got a guy like that who can light it up.
Yeah, and we touched on it a little bit earlier. I just want to hit on it one more time. Is we talk about that extension, that 7.5 foot, extension at his release point. And the way that looks coming out of his hands, yes, it's a possibility that it leads to being injury prone. But if he stays in the bullpen and they get more mileage out of him by doing it that way, he even came out after the game last night and said it. He was like, "I'm doing the same job that I've always done. I'm being tasked with the same thing. I'm just doing it in shorter stints, and I don't have 5 days to, think about it. I don't have 5 days to, try to rest myself up because I don't necessarily have to because I only came out and threw 10 or 12 or 15 pitches or whatever it was to get out of the inning. So, I mean, if that's the plan, that's the plan, and I'm good with it. Although I would like to see, his innings were limited coming up through the system, and I only hope that does not hurt him in the long run. The White Sox seem to be taking a pretty good approach, so we'll see how that goes. Good evening. We haven't said good evening to Uncle Ted tonight because I have highlighted some of his comments. Jamie Wallace, always a pleasure to see you. He says Robert's heating up. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. He had a heck of a game last night, and I hope he does.
Also, I wanted to go back. I don't have the ability to highlight comments, but Jamie Wallace put out a comment. Ruiz frustrating, had great stuff. How many White Sox relievers could you switch out Ruiz for? Bummer. Like, there are a long list of, like, this guy sucked, but hey, the stuff was good. It's mildly insane how, like, many relievers they had that, like, I'd watch Aaron Bummer throw a slider, and I was like, he could be the best closer in the MLB. And then it'd be like, oh, he just walked 5 guys. I saw that comment and I chuckled because I was like, there are so many White Sox relievers where you can go, blank name was frustrating, but man, did they have good stuff. I crackled up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have the command of your pitches. You could have the best stuff out there. If you don't have the command, it's not going to get you very far. So, yeah, Liam Hendricks was a beast, Uncle Ted. And I'm glad to hear that he beat his lymphoma, but unfortunately, his time on the south side, for me, in my opinion, was shorter than I would have liked to have been. I mean, the guy brought a fire that we have not had on the south side in a while, and would be nice to see somebody bring that kind of fire back. There was a a pitcher that likes to slam his rosin bag that I was very happy to see come up, and it he got himself injured, and now we're not watching him anymore. But there's that. Anywho, so Grant Taylor comes up. He has a huge game yesterday, but also recently, the number 26 MLB prospect and the number 2 prospect in the White Sox organization was recently called up as well, a Mr. Kyle Teal. And I believe he's part of that culture and a big part of the future. Have you been able to catch any of his performances in the last few days?
I have. I mean, ironically, he has not had a day off since he got called up. I think Dylan tweeted that out. Shout out Dylan. Does great work here at FutureSox.
He does
tweeted that out before the game. But no, I mean, I've been very impressed. Obviously, nothing. We're talking about this, he strikes out. Anyway, doubled yesterday. Had a couple of singles before that. I think he walked yesterday. I think the on base percentage coming into the day was over 500. If not, it was at 500. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the future for him, as I am with the other catcher. That's an interesting tandem to have, two really good catchers. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And the Sox, I think, are eventually going to have a pair. Obviously, Teal's not going to keep up what he's going through. I think it's a lot of what you've every prospect, honestly, that they've called up has had. It seems like a really fast start. They're hitting the ball out of the gates to start. Then they slow down a little bit, and then they start to creep back up. Mydros, another guy. Shane Smith had a couple of rocky starts there, and he's back on it. So, those are some of the quote-unquote frustrations that you have with a young team, is that they have ups and downs like any rookie does. But
historically, I mean,
these guys come out.
I'm sorry,
and really go up. Go ahead.
Sorry, that's not necessarily uncommon. I mean, that's historically something we see for prospects, good or bad, in all of baseball. And I think the reason is you get these guys come up. Sure, there's some tape and there's some scouting available on them from the minor leagues, but you never know how they're going to react to the state of play at the major league level and going against the best players in the world on a daily basis. So when they come up hot and they come up with all that confidence, you hope that they're going to stay hot, but the reality is Major League Baseball starts to figure these guys out, right? And we've seen it over and over and over again where guys come up, they're hot for a couple weeks, you start getting some tape, you start seeing where the swing and miss is in their game, where their hot zones are, where they're barreling balls, where they're not barreling balls, pitching adjusts to them, and it takes anywhere from like another 70 to 150 at bats in most cases for guys to kind of even themselves out, and they're learning and finding their places where, okay, I need to lay off this because these guys have all of a sudden just started throwing me pitches in these two spots, and now I got to wait. And that patience and that being able to wait is what makes the best players as good as they are. You got your guys that don't strike out because they don't give in to, being able to, or being, they don't give in to what pitchers are just giving them. You've got to lay off of those things and wait for your pitch to come in. So it's not that uncommon. And it seems as though, like Chase Mydroth being a great example, this guy's eye is, I mean, he has one of the most immaculate eyes for the strike zone that I have ever seen. He's just so accurate. He lays off of pitches that are millimeters off the plate. And the ones that are just millimeters onto the plate, if he can't get a swing on it, he'll foul it off.
Yeah.
He protects really well. And the other thing that I'm starting to see from these young guys as well, too, Kyle Teal, Edgar Caro, Chase Mydroth. I've even seen a little bit of it. Lenine Sosa, who before getting hurt has been playing really. I mean, is he a superstar stud? Absolutely not. But has he been mostly solid all year this year? Absolutely. And the one thing that all these guys I noticed they're doing is they're shortening their swing after two strikes. They are making sure that they make good contact instead of trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark every time. And then something this White Sox team has not done in a long time. They have guys just free swinging in any given count at any given time in any given day, no matter what the situation is. And it's good to see that maybe some of this coaching is finally starting to get through some of these young guys, and they might be developing
Yeah.
they might be developing young bats
Yeah.
inside the organization, and that's promising.
Yeah, and I know you just talked about the young guys, but like Mike Talkman, I don't know if I enjoy watching it at bat. Like a guy who just continues to fight and continues to fight. Maybe doesn't walk enough, but they've kind of switched Mydroth and Talkman a little bit up top to lead off, but it's really fun watching the combination of those two taking it bat because they just continue to battle and take and really work a pitcher. And you've seen it where even if you strike out but you take 10 pitches, you're gonna knock out that starter quicker. I mean, it raises a pitch count for pitchers. So a lot of these starting pitchers, even if they're having good nights, are out of the game by the fifth, sixth inning. You're not seeing these guys go deep into the games against the White Sox just because they take so many pitches, they foul off so many pitches. It's a really aggravating thing for a pitcher when you can't get a swing and a miss, and mentally, I think that drains the other team a little bit when it comes to that.
Well, and that goes back to like we were talking about the volatility of bullpens across the league. You're typically your best pitchers, unless it's the back end of the bullpen, are your starters. And if you can knock a starter out and get to a bullpen fairly early, especially early in a series, if you do that in game one of a series, where now you are forcing an opposing manager to use more of his bullpen pieces and kind of wear these guys down and tire them out, you might be able to do some things. And even if you can't win game one, you can potentially shorten the amount of rest and shorten the amount of pitchers available out of a bullpen for games 2 and 3 of a series. And if you're doing that kind of thing, you're going to win more games than not in the long run. So it's just something that you love to see. You'd like to see the White Sox doing things that they haven't been known to do for some time now. So pretty good stuff there. Do you have any other young guys you want to touch on? I see the eyes rolling around in your head. No?
Kind of bouncing around like who we've talked about.
I think we've pretty much covered it, and we're nearing the hour mark here. You want to get into some hot takes and heaters?
Of course, my favorite part.
All right, let's do it. Why don't you go ahead and start us off? Kick us off with your hot take of the week.
Hot take of the week: the White Sox will have 2 All-Star representatives.
Care to mention which 2 you think it is?
Shane Smith will be 1, and I think Mydroth gets there too.
Okay.
Mydroth's going to be tough. I think he's going to do it as a reserve. He's not going to beat out Jacob Wilson, but I wish they'd put him on the ballot as a second baseman because I think he'd make it easily. But I think he's on the ballot as a shortstop, unfortunately. But I think the White Sox get a pair of All-Star selections.
All right, I like it. It is definitely a little spicy. But I'll take it. I don't know that anybody is thinking the White Sox are going to have more than one representative right now other than you, Jake. But I see the potential for it. So, yeah, it's definitely got a little bit of hot sauce on that.
Yeah.
How about a heater?
Who's on a heater? Here's a young guy we haven't talked a lot about. Shout out Mr. Vasil. Mike Vasil, I believe. Vasil. It's definitely Vasil. Anyway, don't even know how to pronounce the dude's name. He is leading all rookies in the entire MLB in ERA. So not really on a heater right now, but he's continuing to keep it low. Do not look at his StatCast numbers. Just don't. Just enjoy the fact that he's pitching well right now. That's all I'm going to say. But he is on a heater right now.
All right. So, I'm going to take the easy route again. I'm going to go. I mean, the hot take, All right, let's do this. My hot take is that the White Sox not only stay at that 400 level ish for the rest of the season, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to say they finish the season with over 65 wins.
I can see it. I think that's a reasonable take.
Really? I thought that was habanero, but I don't
You
know.
got to understand that I'm way more optimistic on this team than will ever happen. So, 65 sounds about right.
All right. All right. That's my hot take for the week. I believe they're going to continue to grow. I think Will Venable has been a really good match for the young kids that are coming up, as well as garnering some respect from the veterans and bringing about a change in the clubhouse that wasn't there before. And we're not hearing about the clicks and whatnot. So yeah, I believe that there's a good chance they finish with 65 or more. I'm gonna go on the more side. Heater. Gotta go with Kyle Teal. Just great seeing him come up and not succumb to the pressures of being the number 2 prospect and playing for a team that has not been known to develop position players, and not let that get to his head, and him coming out and playing his brand of baseball and looking like the number 26 overall MLB prospect that he has been chosen to be.
Yeah. It's been a strong showing so far.
It has. And I'm hoping that it continues to be that way.
I agree with you.
All right, cool. Well, wow. I'm going to go across some of these really quickly. Uncle Ted with his hot take. The White Sox finished with more wins than the Orioles this season. How hot do you think that is?
Very hot, because the Orioles are, I believe, red hot right now. I think the Orioles are on an insane heater. Speaking of heaters, the Orioles currently have 4 more wins than the White Sox. In their last 10, they're 7-3, and they're currently beating the Tigers, I believe.
They have heated up. They have heated up as of just the last week and a half or so. It seems like they've gone on a real tear. That series they had, what was it, in Boston just recently, or was it against the Yankees? It was one of those 2 teams in their division over there. They had a game the other night where it was like one of the highest scoring games I'd seen all season. They were scoring like 12 runs or something. It was like 12-8 at one point. Earlier this week, end of last week, I don't know. But yeah, they're putting up some numbers. They're heating up. But I mean, if you think the White Sox are gonna have more wins than them, I mean, I'm here for it. I'll take it. Jamie Wallace saying Vargas is throwing a leather, keep him at third base.
So Ramos is coming.
Brian Ramos might have something to say about that. And
he can also play first, though.
I was gonna say, either one of them could probably play first, because the other guy that was starting there for us for the last 5 years or so is not doing well in Charlotte. So until we see some improvement there, I don't expect to see him back on the south side anytime soon.
Can I have one more hot take?
Sure.
The Rockies will beat the White Sox record by 3 or more games.
I don't know.
The White Sox will only have the record for 1 year.
Yeah, I don't know if that's hot at all. They're bad.
They are horrible. I ended up watching a game last night because I was like, I have to watch. Like, I have to know what this feels like to watch. And I was like, oh my God, this is worse. Ramos is on a heater right now. That's who should have been my heater, Brian Ramos. Anyway, they are like, it is horrible baseball. Just god awful baseball.
I mean, we have gone through some really, really rough seasons here on the South Side as fans. It's been tough to watch the White Sox for a while. It was tough to go through that rebuild that we went through just to get 2 playoff appearances and a single win in each one of them. and just get absolutely annihilated by teams we should have been smoking at that particular time. And then we go into, full on fire sale again, and we go through the whole staffing issue in the firing of Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams, and everybody's like, "Oh, who are they gonna get? We're gonna get Chris Getz," and everybody's like, "What? Like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me? This is your due diligence on looking for a new." Like, we have gone through it all as White Sox fans, and those Rockies. Oh my goodness,
Their
so
future isn't bright either. Like they don't
no.
have any prospects, and it's core, so you can't develop any pitchers. It is miserable to be a Rockies fan. Like they're bad, and there's no like end in sight. Like there just isn't.
No, it's not
It's so bad.
good. It is not good. And you know what? It takes a little bit of heat off of us on this side of town because I mean we were the laughing stock of baseball. Not that we're much further from it now, but the signs of improvement are there, and I think a lot of people are taking notice of that. So, but yeah, wow, my goodness. I mean, I can't imagine. I've actually watched a handful of Colorado Rockies games this year to see how bad they were. I am probably, as a White Sox fan, watching more baseball than a Colorado Rockies fan is watching them
It's
because I am tuning in to see how bad they are, and it is atrocious.
it's bad. It's really bad baseball.
It is, it is, and it's nice to not be that team that everybody's talking about.
It's only going to
Not gonna
happen
lie.
for 1 year. They're going to have the record for 1 year. That is the like.
Well, that doesn't make the White Sox good. It just
I'm just saying.
we're just
I
being
mean,
talked about less
right?
for being bad.
No more
So,
graphics. We're done.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, buddy. Well, you know what? Thanks for checking in with me. Thanks for
Yeah.
doing a little therapy with us. Thank you to all our chatters for hanging out and all your hot takes that you were giving us. I don't see any heaters. Everybody's got hot takes galore. But it is what it is. There's not a whole lot of heaters to hand out because
Chase is a baller. That's a heater. Not
yeah, we'll
labeled as
go.
a
We'll,
heater,
we'll
but
throw that
that's
one
a
up
heater.
there. Baldwin playing some outfield in Charlotte.
You know
I
it.
don't know.
Yes, he is. He's playing a
So
lot of outfield in Charlotte. Anyway,
yeah,
continue.
no, it's all good. We're here to talk baseball, but I'm gonna wrap it up. I got some things that I need to get done tonight, and we're gonna see everybody again next week because I have made some changes to my schedule, and we will be around every Wednesday. I apologize for missing a few weeks here and there, guys. The job is always going to come first, but like I said, made some changes there. So we'll see you next week. This has been Future Sots Hot Takes and Heaters. If you guys like our content, please hit that like, smash it, annihilate it, destroy your keyboard. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications so you know when we're going live. You can find us every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. You can also find James Ian here on YouTube and the Purple app. You can also find shows that feature Not Cease, and you can find some shows that feature Elijah and Jeff, our other AAA consults. If you guys really like any of our content, if you see us going live, you can also get into the super chats. We'll highlight your comments. Maybe we'll come up with some things later on in the year. I might have some giveaways for super chatters. We'll put your name in the hat at the end of the season, and we'll throw some stuff out at you. But we appreciate all and any of that. You can also throw $2 at our Patreon on the website and get all our exclusive content, as well as I should say that includes prospect rankings and write-ups, and you'll see some of our draft profiles coming out here shortly. So you guys take a look at that stuff. Check out the website, and until next week, go White Sox. We'll see you then. That guy right there. Oh wait, this way. That's Jacob Thome.
It's mirrored.
You can find him on X at jthome21. You can find me, Danny Miller FS, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our our Twitter channel, our X channel, and find all of Ian's prospect highlights there. Good night. See you next week. Bye.